There we go. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The time is 6 o'clock. It's Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020. And we are opening our Duncanville City Council meeting by video conference. The first thing that we have to do is a little bit of housekeeping. So I'll read the supplemental notice of meeting by video conference in an order of the Office of the Governor, issued March 16th, 2020. City Council for the City of Duncanville, City Council regular meeting by video conference at 6 p.m. on beginning April 20. We are now May 5th. And this is in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing. And this is in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. There will be no public access to the physical location. And in terms of public comments, we do have 3, and I will read those at the appropriate time on the agenda. And they were submitted in time prior to 4 o'clock on today's date of meeting. So that's okay. So little explanations. The audience is in listen-only mode. However, the public comments that were submitted by 4 p.m. will be read into the record. And as I said, I will do that. Each council member must raise their hand and announce their name prior to speaking, please. And any votes that we take will be taken by roll call as the city secretary calls each person's name. And then you please state if you are for or against the item being voted on. And housekeeping, please, we will be putting the executive session at the end of our city council meeting. So we'll get through all the regular item meetings and then go into city executive session at the very end. Okay, going into our work session, our briefing, we're not going to, citizen comments will be heard during our regular session. So, Mr. Hugman, if you would discuss the consent item, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. On your consent agenda tonight, item 4A are the minutes for the April 21st, 2020 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B is a resolution finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company's application for approval to amend its distribution cost recovery factor to increase distribution rates should be denied, and authorizing the City of Duncanville to participate with the Encore City Steering Committee in reviewing those rates. Encore Electric has submitted a filing to the PUC to change their distribution cost recovery factor. In other words, to increase their distribution rates and their revenues. And so as a utility within Encore, we have the right to deny that rate request, and then to participate with the Encore steering committees and their legal counsel to evaluate that rate review and come to a more favorable rate for our citizens and customers. Item 4C is a resolution awarding a renewal contract for pavement markings and installation to Elite Striping, LLC. This is an amount with an estimated amount of $112,409. Annually, we contract with a company for removal and application of our reflective buttons and also the thermoplastic markings on the streets. This contract was bid in 2019, and it was a one-year contract with 4 one-year renewals. This is the first renewal of that contract. There were no increases in the unit pricing. And again, we are estimating $112,000 for that contract, and that is in the FY 19-20 budget. Item 4D is a resolution authorizing incorporation of amendment number 1 to a contract to Eagle Remediation and Demolition Services in the amount of $13,977. This is for demolition and removal of the lube pits and underground fuel storage tanks at the Shameyville property at 727 South Cockrell Hill. And that would increase the original contract amount of $33,322 to a total of $53,768. So that property was previously demoed after it was declared substandard. We demoed the buildings as per the judge's order, but we did not touch the tanks because that property was not owned by the city at the time. The property owner had left it in decay, and we could not get in touch with the property owners. So subsequently, it was declared to be a substandard structure by the judge. And after due notice, we ended up demolishing and putting a lien on the property. It went to foreclosure in 2018, and then when it did not sell, it was turned over to the city. And at that point, we began working on clearing up the legal things on that because of, again, the property owner could not find. And during that time, then TCEQ came out to inspect the tanks. And because the tanks were in the ground and are full, we do have to now remediate those or remove those tanks. And so the fact that we were not the owner of the property, TCEQ recognizes that, and we won't get penalized for that. But we do have a requirement under the TCEQ regulations now to remove those tanks. When the bid was put out, there was an estimate on how full the tanks were because we really didn't know. And then when the contractor went in to start doing the work, they found that the tanks were full. And so that changed the pricing to remove all of the liquids in that tank. And that's what this amendment is for. And then again, the total contract amount, $53,000.
I'd like to pull that and discuss.
Councilmember Jameson has requested to pull item 4D and put it into items for individual consideration. And that would become item 5. Item 5. Executive session is 5F. This would make it item 5G. So item 4D of consent items becomes item 5G under items for individual consent. Okay. Pending no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to approve consent.
Mayor,
consent
this is the
agenda.
briefing only.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yep. Okay, sorry. Okay. 2 in the briefing session, briefings and presentations. Discuss the swearing in of Mayor Barry L. Gordon and Councilmember Mark D. Cooks and a video presentation. I'm sure you are all aware of by the governor and by the attorney general and by those in charge of the elections in terms of permitting those individuals who would have been on the May 2nd ballot, if there were these options, would be permit those unopposed individuals to take office in a normal time. And in accordance with those options, Councilmember Cooks and myself did extra, and he and I were sworn in today. We took the oath of office today at City Council, and that was videoed earlier, and we can bring up that video now, if you would, please. term of city council, all the city council members and the staff that have put up with me and helped me, guided me, and helped me learn the position and all things that we're doing. And I just want to thank the Lord, my Lord and Savior, for giving me this opportunity and this chance. I, Barry L. Gordon, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office as mayor of the city of Duncanville, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state, so help me God. Can I say a few words for the video? I want to thank the people and the citizens of our great city of Duncanville for allowing me to have the honor and privilege of serving another term. And I thank my wife, and my son, and his wife, unfortunately can't be here today, for their support, their wisdom for this first term, and for the city council, all the city council members and the staff that have put up with me and helped me, guided me, and helped me learn the position and all things that we're doing. And I just want to thank the Lord, my Lord and Savior, for giving me this opportunity and this chance to continue to serve Him, because it is only through Him that I'm able to do this, His will that I'm doing. So thank you to everybody. It is an honor and privilege for us to serve the second term. Thank you. God bless all of our citizens in this great city, city of Champion, city of Duncanville. Thank you.
I, Mark B. Phillips, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duty of the office of Council District Number 4 by the city of Duncanville, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state. So help me God. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. To the citizens of Duncanville, I really made an introduction first before I started this video live. I want to thank you first of all of the citizens, for allowing me to serve you in this capacity of City Council Member District 4. It's been a wonderful time to serve our city. Have a servant heart to continue. I did not have an opponent this time, and I was blessed enough for that. But it's more so about the citizens of Duncanville. And thank you for all that you do for our city. My colleagues sit with me, that we all make the decision on behalf of the city. We'll ask again that you will always pray for our family, our city, and our country. And most of all, we'll ask you to stay social distance where our city can be safe. Thank you very much, and we appreciate, and God bless God bless America and the city of Duncanville.
All right, so to all of our citizens that are tuned in and to all council members as well, Mr. Cooks and I thank you for this opportunity to continue to serve our city in our capacities. We want to express our thanks to everyone who has supported us and guided us and helped us through this journey. And knowing that these unprecedented times that we're working through right now is a learning experience day by day. And nothing can replace the experience that we're going through. But we know that each of us has a great deal of background and wisdom to contribute to this council and guiding us through this time that we're going through at this moment. So again, Mark and I, we thank you for this opportunity to continue to serve. So that concludes our work session, briefing session, and it is only 6:16.
Mayor Gordon,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe Councilmember Cooks has something to say.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. I echo what the mayor has said, and to our citizens of Duncanville, thank you very much for trusting in us to lead our city, be one of our leaders in our city. It is truly a blessing as well as a privilege to serve Duncanville. I consider it more than just a service to our community. I really consider it a ministry that the Lord has blessed us with to help lead our city and going forward. I love each one of you as our citizens, and thank you very much. And if I can be of service as always to you, we're here, whether you're calling us, whether you're emailing us, to hear what you have to tell us to help lead our city. Thank you very much, and really appreciate you and each one of our council members, colleagues who we're sitting around the dodgers with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kristen, is that video going to be posted on our website, or is it strictly going to be shown in association with our council meeting video?
It will be shown on the website, and our PIO will put it on social media probably tomorrow.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Mhm.
As I was beginning to say that it's only 6:18 right now, and instead of recessing and holding executive session, if it's okay with everybody, we may as well go ahead and do executive session now. Is that agreeable? Let's put it this way. If you have an objection, let me know. So silence is consent. All right. Based on that, I believe we have consent. So we are going to enter into executive session. And this is executive session item number 1 on the agenda. City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code. Deliberation.
Mayor, I think we have to close one and we have to get out and then come back in.
That is correct, but I need to read this before we do close out.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So this is, we're entering this into the record for what the executive session is going to be. So executive session, item 1 is parens 1, to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that a governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have, locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body and with which the government body is conducting economic development negotiations, or subparagraph 2, to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect described by subdivision 1. So city council members, if you would please exit completely from this video conference, go to your email and click in, and any citizens that are logged in, we will be leaving at this moment and going into executive session. And I will call that executive session into separate convening at a separate time. So we are recessing at 6:20 for the record. So the timestamp, interestingly, is 8 p.m. on the nose, calling to order our city council meeting of the City of Duncanville City Council meeting at 8 p.m. on the 5th of May, 2020. And with that, let me make a note. Moving on to our agenda item is the invocation. Councilmember Vera Cruz, if you would give us the invocation, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let us pray. Lord, I thank you again for the safety of our city, our citizens, Lord, and I always thank you, Lord, for our mayor, our city manager, our council. I also pray for our school district, Dr. Smith, and all that they're encountering and the challenges that lie ahead of them, that, Lord, you continue to just have the Holy Spirit guide the way. As always, Lord, I pray for our first responders who are at the forefront of this coronavirus, and that our citizens are taken care of. Lord, as we move forward, I present this council meeting to you, Lord. I ask that the Holy Spirit just guide our steps, as always. I thank you for Mayor and Mark D. Once again, coming on board as part of our team, and I pray a blessing over them. I ask this in your mighty name. Amen.
Thank you. We will now do the pledges of allegiance to our two flags. If you would join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the Texas flag, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 1 on our agenda, mayor's report. I had a couple things. I'm kind of reluctant to do anything based on the time factor. One thing I do want to say is Governor Abbott was on TV today, and he is going to be coming out with a new release of more businesses that are able to open, and those are going to be salons and hair salons and spas and so forth. So we need to get the details on that before we move forward too far. We are still having the spread of COVID-19, not only in our county. Oops, really? I'm open. I'm not unmuted. COVID-19 is still spreading. We're having record days in terms of COVID spreading during our Dallas County. And as of the latest report that came out from Judge Jenkins' office at 5:48 p.m. today, our hour count within the city of Duncanville has now risen to 66. So we still need to be safe. We still need to be wise in what we do. And in terms of census, please continue to encourage everyone to do the census. Our Duncanville census response rate is up to 61%, which is very good. It's above the state average and above the national average. So please, when you talk to your constituents, please have them continue to press into getting that census done. Concludes my mayor's report. Are there any city council members' reports? Joe, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give a shout out to 102 Tanglewood, the mini pantry there with Joanne DeLeon and Greg DeLeon, who's a senior at Bishop Dunn High School. And it started out as just a mini pantry, but it's evolved into something really great in that area, supporting the families and just showing what we're made of here in Duncanville. And that is, we love our citizens, our community is our family, and we do everything we can to support them. So I thank them for that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any others? I don't have any video up on anybody else, so I'm going to have to rely purely on your audio. Hearing none. Moving on to city manager's report. Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick, did you have a council member's report?
No, sir, you were up there by yourself, so I just thought I'd help out.
Okay. All right, thanks. Okay. Kevin, is there a city manager's report?
No, sir, no report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item, where are we? 2A, proclamations. Let me pull mine up here. The first item is a proclamation recognizing May 15, 2020 as Police Memorial Day and May 10 through 16, 2020 is National Police Week. And let me pull up my proclamation. I will do this one. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the city of Duncanville play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Duncanville. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agency of the city of Duncanville unceasingly provide a vital public service. Therefore, I, Barry Gordon, Mayor of the city of Duncanville, do hereby call upon all citizens of Duncanville and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10 through 16, 2020 as National Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our people may join in commemorating law enforcement officers of the city of Duncanville, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to our community, and in so doing, have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. I further call upon all citizens of the city of Duncanville to observe May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Signed this day, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of the City of Duncanville. Moving on to item 2B, a proclamation recognizing the week of May 17 to 23 of 2020 as Emergency Medical Services Week, with May 20th being Emergency Medical Services for Children Day. Councilmember Vera Cruz, please read that.
Yes, sir. Whereas emergency is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the Emergency Medical Services team are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate to those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the Emergency Medical Services system consists of emergency physicians, nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, first responders, educators, administrators, and others. And whereas the members of Emergency Medical Services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishment of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, our Mayor, Barry Gordon, of the city of Duncanville, recognizes this event and does hereby proclaim this week of May 17th through the 23rd, May 2020, with May 20th being Emergency Medical Services for Children, Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme EMS Strong Beyond the Call. I encourage the community to observe the week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. There you go, sir. Thank you.
Get off the internet.
Thank you. Moving on to item C, proclamation recognizing May 17 through 23, 2020 as National Public Works Week. Councilmember McBurnett, if you would please do that for us. You're muted, Don.
Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives and vital importance to sustainable communities and the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Duncanville. And whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedication, efforts of public work professionals, engineers, managers, and employees from your local public works department who are responsible for and who plan, design, build, operate, and maintain the transportation, water supply, water treatment, public buildings, structures, and facilities, and who deliver solid waste services, transit, and fleet services, which are essential to serve our citizens. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff our public works department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And whereas the men and women of the Public Works Department of the City of Duncanville unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now, therefore, on behalf of our Mayor, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of Duncanville, do hereby call upon all citizens of Duncanville, upon all patriotic, civic, educational organizations to observe the week of May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances of which all our people may join in, commemorating Public Works Department employees of the City of Duncanville, past and present, which I would mention Bob Lee, Dennis Schwartz, all the way through Greg Ramey and others, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to our community, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the health, safety, and well-being of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, moving on to item 3 on our agenda, which is citizens input. And by video conferencing, and now we have our city council or the city hall closed, we do accept citizens input by emails, providing they submit them to the city secretary by 4 p.m. on the day of city council. And they have done that. I have 3, and I will read them with the information that I have and put them into the record. This is from Alex McLaughlin, and it is is the address. Well, I'll just read it. My name is Alexander McLaughlin, and I live at 310 South Alexander Avenue. I have been a resident of Duncanville for 36 years. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I urge you to support 2 items on the agenda for tonight, namely the staff recommendations that the city applies for the build and CDBG grants. I have the honor of being the current chair of the Park and Recreation Advisory Board and had the privilege of serving on the recent board commission. The extension of trails and bike lanes has long been a priority of the City Council and the Park Board, and a build grant would help our city advance this process. The fact that our neighboring cities of Dallas and DeSoto are partnering in this process highlights the importance all our communities place on the extension and interconnection of trails and bike lanes. Either of the alternatives laid out in CDBG are excellent opportunities to improve our city. Since I am unashamedly a parks guy, you might conclude I would argue for the Lakeside Park option. However, I live in Forest Hills, so both options are for me a win-win. Please approve both recommendations. Thank you, Alexander McLaughlin. The next citizens input was received on time, and let's see, Mr. McLaughlin is at 1:48. This one that I have before me is at 3:31. And this is from Beth Farrell. Council members and Mayor Gordon, thank you for your time. I'm writing to express support for the CDBG and build grants. Lakeside Park would benefit greatly from the CDBG grant and would make a great park even better. The build grant for Daniel Dell bike lanes is really needed in order to complete the bike plan sooner than later. These are both great plans. Respectfully, Beth Farrell. The third and final input I have came in at 3:38 p.m. and it says, to whom it may concern, I am a resident of Duncanville in the 75137 zip code. I support CDBG and the build grants. Thank you for your service, Lindy Litzenberger. So that concludes the citizen inputs that we have received. Moving on to the consent agenda. The secretary will read the consent agenda, noting that item 4D and the consent agenda has been moved into the items for individual consideration as item 5G. So City Secretary, if you'd please read the consent agenda.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the April 21st City Council regular meeting. 4B, consider a resolution finding that Encore Electric Delivery Company LLC's application for approval to amend its distribution cost recovery factor to increase distribution rates with the city should be denied. Authorizing participation with Encore City Steering Committee, authorizing the hiring of legal counsel and consulting services, finding that the city's reasonable rate case expenses shall be reimbursed by the company, finding that the meeting at which this resolution is passed is open to the public as required by law, requiring notice of this resolution to the company and legal counsel. 4C, consider a resolution awarding a renewal contract for pavement marking, supply, and installation services to Elite Striping LLC, Cedar Hill, Texas, in the amount bid for an estimated amount of $112,000, $409.45.
Thank you. Since we have moved item 4D to the items for individual consideration, the chair will accept a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
Mayor,
Councilmember Burnett makes a motion.
I would like to make a motion we approve the for individual consideration.
Second, Mark Cook.
And Councilmember Cooks has seconded, and this will be a roll call vote. City Secretary?
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
Or.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
Or.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
Or.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against? Councilmember Jameson, are you there?
I show that she is still muted. Councilmember Jameson, can you unmute? Okay, we're still having technical difficulties. Please move on with the roll call.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. So how do we record Councilmember Jameson being unable to respond?
Is an abstention.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. The item is approved. Moving on to items for individual consideration. Item 5A. Consider amending resolution number 2020-026R, extending a mayoral declaration of a state of emergency and order as a result of the COVID-19 virus, providing for interim public safety measures, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing a severability clause, and providing for an effective date. One of the things that this does is I'll try to pull it into a summation if I can. Our current declaration expires May the 6th. The governor has imposed general administration order expiring May the 15th. Our new order that's in your packet today takes our declaration to May the 8th.
And I don't hear them.
Okay, can you hear me, Councilmember Jameson? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can.
Okay, good. Thanks. Good to have you with us now.
Yeah.
So I'll start over. Putting this into summation, what we're doing. Our current declaration expires May the 6th. The new order that you have in your packet extends this order to May the 18th. I'm sorry, ours goes to May 20th. So in between all these dates, what we have occurring is all sorts of stuff coming out from the governor and things coming out from the county as well. So GA 18 that the governor issued, which also had the Texas Open Report, which opened non-essential businesses, that one comes out May the 15th. I'm sorry, expires May the 15th. And we expect a new order coming out from the governor on May the 18th. So this is all in flux, but what's necessary for us to do as a city council is to extend our declaration to an expiration date of May the 20th, which puts us a couple of days, it puts us a couple of days beyond what the governor is doing, but also understanding if something happens in the interim between now and what the governor does on the 18th or even on the 19th, we still have the flexibility and the options of rescission. We can change this date if we need to. What this date of expiration of May the 20th does is it gives us the operability of our city to continue under this declaration unless we see something so substantial and so different that's going to be happening that we have no ability to foresee. Now, it also includes the Dallas County supplement order that it was issued May the 4th on reopened services. And under reopened services, he also includes the GA 18 coming from the governor and the Texas Open Report. So there's all these pieces are now coming together in reference documents. I have been looking at this and trying to understand. As you know, every time the governor issues something and then the county judge Jenkins issues something, it's not always clear in consonance with what the two are saying. But it is very clear that the governor in his Texas Open Report and GA 18 has stated in black and white that no local jurisdiction has the ability to override whatever he's doing. In fact, his orders supersede everything at the county and city level. So understanding that and putting it all together, the question comes, well, I'm getting off track here. Let me just make a comment as well. The executive orders that we're receiving from Governor Abbott are very carefully written, and the language he says that people should, and he recommends, and he highly encourages. When Dallas County Judge Jenkins issues mirror types of orders after Governor Abbott issues his, those shoulds and those encourages and those recommendations become shalls. So it places us in a position of how we couch our particular orders signed by me coming forth from this council. Now, it sounds like I'm a little off track, but I'm really not. What we're doing here is just extending our declaration for our city until May the 20th. And what I don't feel is necessary for us to do at this time is for the city to issue a mirror of what Judge Jenkins has just put out. His language is somewhat different than what the governor says. As I said, the governor is like, this is what you should do. And Judge Jenkins says, this is what you shall do. So for us as a city to try and understand what language do we capture in our order, it puts us in a difficult position in terms of, because whatever I issue becomes a law. And that's what we need to understand. So my preference is at this point, all we do is we issue our declarations, extending our emergency declaration to May the 20th and not incorporate in any further orders what has just occurred with the governor in GA 18 and what Dallas County Judge has just issued yesterday in terms of reopened services. It's a long discussion on a really easy topic, but I felt it necessary to give you that summation so that you understand it. And, you know, we have our city attorney with us. Bob, have I said anything that is wrong or you need to not reiterate, but embellish?
Yeah,
Just put-
I would. During the course of our meeting, the governor has issued GA 21. And
Oh, my.
Yeah, so GA 21 supersedes GA 18, which is reflected in our order. And I've got it up on my computer, Mayor, and I will summarize very quickly. He's added to the list of open services, wedding venues, wedding reception services, starting on May 8th, cosmetology salons, barbershops, etc. He's added tanning salons and similar. He's added swimming pools. Starting on May 18th, he's allowing office workers to return back to work, all manufacturing facilities and gymnasiums, as long as they meet the 25% distancing requirements. That would be the same for swimming pools as well. So if you would consider this, I would consider that motion that we replace 18 with 19, 20, and 21. This order will expire on the 19th, which is the time of your next meeting, so that would be timely. We would assume that there would be additional orders in the future. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you or the council may have.
Just as an insert to what Bob just said, I watched Governor Abbott this afternoon and I heard everything he said, and what Bob has just reiterated I knew was coming. Before we started our meeting, I went online to find out if GA 21 was coming. It had not come, but as Bob said, while we've been in session, 21 has now come out. So but Bob, all we're doing here is a declaration of the emergency state.
Yeah, we're incorporating we incorporated GA 18, 19, and 20. Since 18 has now been superseded by 21, we would incorporate 19, 20, and 21, and I'll make that change after our meeting. If the motion is to approve our order, I will make that change if whoever makes the motion understands that I will change 18 to 21. Thank you.
Okay. So are there any questions from the council members on this? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve with the amendment that our city attorney has recommended to us in terms of replacing GA 18 with GA 19, 20, and 21.
I'd like to make a motion that we replace GA 18 to GA 19 through 21 as prepared by the city attorney.
And extend our declaration to.
Declarations until May 20th.
There you go. Okay. Okay.
I'll second it, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Cooks, and we have a second by Councilmember Mac Burnett. No further discussion. We'll take a roll call vote, please. City Secretary.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
Good.
At large, Council.
For.
Got it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Okay, motion is
Wait,
approved.
wait. They didn't call me. Wait.
Oh, I thought you were in between there. Sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
For.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
That sounds like a golf swing.
Okay, thank you very much. So a little complicated, but things are changing by the moment, and that's what we're having to contend with, folks. So it's just the way it is. Okay, moving on to item 5B, consider resolution approving a temporary COVID-19 business retention and assistance program. This is presented to us by Jessica James. Jessica?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. We'll wait here for the presentation to be pulled up. And second page, please. Thank you. Mayor and Council, in response to the current economic conditions that you all just spoke about with the COVID-19 pandemic, on April 16th, 2020, the DCEDC board unanimously approved $250,000 to fund a temporary COVID-19 business retention and assistance program. The program is aimed at small businesses with 20 employees or less that have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. The board did approve grants between $1,000 and $5,000. And the reason being is because this program is aimed at small businesses with less than 20 employees. The board did determine that even $1,000 could be beneficial to a self-employed or small business that is paying rent or for a booth or office space. The applicant must meet the general participation program requirements in order to apply for the funding. The DCEDC board will be reviewing and evaluating each grant request on an individual basis while considering the overall economic impact to the grant. And this is to help ensure that each application is evaluated equally. The number of grants obviously is limited to available funding, and initially the DCEDC will receive applications for a 3-week time period. Once that 3 weeks is over, this could be extended depending on the business response and also available funding. Next slide, please. In terms of what the overall general participation requirements are for the businesses, is applicants must have been in business for at least 120 days prior to March 13th, 2020 Mayor's Shelter-in-Place declaration. The board wanted to ensure that businesses that had applied were in business prior to January 1 and that they had a few months to show that they were a viable business. In addition, applicants must be currently operating their business to the level possible by the declaration and to plan on reopening to normal operations once the declaration is lifted. The board wanted to ensure that that the funds were provided to the businesses who are planning to reopen and not to businesses that had closed and were not going to open their doors. Applicants must have 20 or fewer employees. Grants must be used to cover operating costs of the applicant's business, including but not limited to leases, rent, loan payments on buildings, equipment possibly, business inventory, utilities, and payroll. Other needs will be considered on an individual basis by the board. Next slide, please. In addition, applicants' business must be obviously legally operating in the city of Duncanville to be considered, and they must be abiding by all codes and ordinances. All grant applicants must fill out an initial application. This application would include information, it is confidential, but it would include information such as the name of the business. If they do own their building, the value of the building that they own. If not, that doesn't have to be included. The annual taxable sales that they have. If they've only been in business less than a year, then what so far have been their taxable sales. The number of people employed or desired to retain. the annual payroll, as well as the annual city utilities, including water and sewer. This information would all be confidential and would be used to determine the overall impact of the grant and basically the ROI. Applicants will be required to provide copies of paid operating expense receipts dated after March 13th to receive grant funds awarded. This is a reimbursement grant, so that's why they would have to provide these receipts in order to show that they did have expenses that impacted them during this time. All funds must be used within 6 months of receiving the grant. If the funds are not used within this time period, the applicant may provide an extension request to the board to consider. They just want to ensure that these funds are used appropriately during this time of need and when they were applicable. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we have done is I just wanted to provide you some overview of some of the other cities in the Best Southwest, as well as around the state, what they're offering. And by no means is this every single one, but it is a representation to some degree of what is out there. And so what you'll see for the most part, the Best Southwest cities are not providing any assistance. The majority of those are due to budget constraints. DeSoto has had some discussion about they could potentially, but as of now, as of yesterday, that hadn't been approved. You'll see that Waxahachie there approved $1 million. Those are for loans, not for grants, and those are for businesses with 50 employees or less, and the grants are up to $50,000. I mean, the loans, I'm sorry, I apologize, are up to $50,000. You'll see the other Ferris, Balch Springs, and Glen Heights. Again, they are not, they have no money budgeted at this point. Next slide, please. In addition, you'll see, and you've probably heard quite a bit, McKinney, they budgeted $1 million and they do have grants. It's for business size of 50 full-time employees or less. All business types can be considered, including nonprofits, but the amount of assistance is $1,500. Georgetown EDC, they did $100,000. Now the chamber and another group had put some other money in, but the community, but the EDC had put $100,000 for grants, no loans. Nonprofits or home-based business were not allowed to apply, and then their grants were up to $5,000. So they didn't identify a bottom; they just put in a max. And then Bastrop, they said initially that their budget would be $50,000 to $100,000. The last thing that I read, it said $180,000, I believe. And they do have grants. They do not offer loans. They did not specify a business size, but the only businesses that could apply were those businesses that were forced to close. So essentially, they listed them as the non-essential businesses, because since the essential businesses could remain open, or at least a portion of that. And then the amount of assistance, again, there was no minimum, but it was a maximum up to $10,000. With that, I would like to thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the council has. In addition, the DCEDC president, Mr. Steve Dial, is also available to answer any questions that the city council should have of the board. So either of us are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Coates.
Yeah, thank you. First, I want to commend the EDC board and Jessica, your leadership as well, for even mentioning this bringing this to our attention for the city. I love what you have down as a great start, and I know we talked about this initially, but I emailed to each one of you now, hopefully in front of you, just some of my thoughts really quick, where I won't have to recap it and bore you too long with my thoughts or recommendations on this. But again, I commend the EDC for what they said here. So my first thought is two phases of it. One says reimbursement grants, I think we start from 5,000 up to 10,000. And as an example of that would be maybe perhaps 15 are awarded 5,000, 10 awarded 10,000, which comes up to 175,000 with amounts of $5,000 or $10,000 in grants. I think we put a stipulations on that, however, kind of very similar to what we've seen around some other major cities. But I thought I wanted to recommend some twists to it, and that is those grants amount 5 or 10 with the stipulations of 25% going into payroll has to be used by payroll. 50% of the funds of the grant goes into advertisement. And the reason I thought advertisement was to increase the advertisements within the city to encourage people to come return back to their business. And then 25% operational of using the funds of operational, whether it's the 5,000 or the 10,000. Note that I said that that total amount was 175,000, and I'll get to that in just a second. The second part, though, I thought when I was looking at this, is to consider that any business within the city, again, following what EDC already mentioned, if they've already received the PPP program, that would perhaps, again, this is just my fully thought, this would perhaps knock them out of getting the initial grants from the city of Duncanville to allow the smaller business owners to become a part of getting some grant dollars as well. And then based upon what we talked about or how we distribute this, I like that lottery process on the application after it's completed. It gives the EDC and the council an opportunity to look, pull that out, still follow the same stipulations that EDC has mentioned by looking at it, and then through a lottery process, identify those business owners, which that comes to a little bit, about 28 total business owners that we'll be able to help throughout the city. So again, that's the recap of that first 175,000 that's EDC and the council approving. But then the second part of that would be a small business repayment grant. And what you're reading here is says that it's the city to secure a loan for about 75,000 to be used as following. The same process, the lottery process, still following the same stipulations that EDC talked about, but we award 3 businesses $25,000, and that is a repayable grant. And I'll pause here to say the reason I thought on a repayable grant is that in 2 years, it gives us an opportunity to look at this program and see if it's something we continue in the future. But I put the very similar stipulations on that. I said 30% of the loan proceeds must be used for advertising within the Duncanville area. And then the rest, of course, since it's a loan, could be used as the business owners receive. With a 24-month repayment deferred, 24-month repayment plan deferred by the 6 months, 1% or 2% interest that we would charge that business owner. Work with a local bank, such as 2 local banks within our area, 2 small independent banks that's in our area, or with our finance department to come up with the 3 businesses with 25,000. Put them in that same lottery system that I talked about initially, after the application is completed and approved. After it's approved, how does an approval work for this particular process? I propose that it's a little bit different than we did on the grants, where before the 10 and the 15 is strictly just the EDC and the council. I put one more stipulations on here would be we assign 2 EDC members, 2 council members, 1 staff person, whether it's EDC director or a finance director or system director, and then 1 bank staff person. And then we look at those 3 and award those loans to the 3 businesses that meet the criteria that's already there. Again, after that committee has approved those 3, it still must be approved by the EDC board and the city council board. So those are my information. That's the information that I sent to each one of you, just as a note that I wanted to recommend. One thing I did not mention here on the small business repayment grant piece is that because of the amount and because it is a loan, the stipulation of already receiving the PPP would not fall in that line because it's strictly a loan in this case, and we're working to get that back. So those are my comments on the information that the Jessica presented this morning, tonight, as a additional comment, and each one of you have what I just talked about in your email box as we speak. That concludes my my comments for now. I'm open up to any questions as Jessica is for the economic development plan itself.
I have some comments, but I will reserve my comments if there's anybody else who wishes to speak. Mr. Veracruz?
Yes, sir. So just so I understand, the Economic Development Corporation is going to review and select the businesses for council approval. Is that correct?
Are you talking?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jessica. I'm sorry.
I apologize. What we are presenting, yes, that the EDC would be the one that would evaluate those and then make those recommendations to City Council for final approval. Yes, sir.
And what I'm recommending is no, is because, and what I'm recommending is no, simply because it takes away anyone saying to us that we're giving it to someone who works with the city, someone who's familiar with the council, and it takes away all of those things of thinking it's a system where they're not designed to win.
Okay, my thoughts are, I mean, that's what the Economic Development Corporation is for. Is that not correct?
Is to do what?
Well, apply the program and then select once applications are submitted.
It could if that's what you wanted, and that's why I wanted to give you some additional. If that's what you wanted, if you choose to vote that way, yes.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Mr. McBurnett? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say I've seen a lot of thought go into a lot of this from Councilman Cooks as well as the 4B board. They've set up the system. I lean more towards them just running the system. I don't really agree with the city becoming doing loans. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Any other comments before I make mine? Mr. Anderson?
I want to keep it simple because if this thing, people are needing money right now. They don't need it 3-4 weeks down the road, 6 weeks now. They're needing money at this point right now where we're at. And so I wish we could shorten the time frame for them somehow. And also, I really want to recommend that we bump it up from $5,000 to $10,000. I don't think $1,000 is enough. It's enough to do. And I understand what other cities are doing and stuff, but I think Duncanville's more progressive than these other people around us, and I'd like to see us. Our small businesses are our backbone in this community right here. And I think it's vital. But really, I'd like to make it simple. No disrespect to Councilman Cooks.
No, not at all.
But I'd like to keep it more simple, where because it's going to be hard to manage where all that money goes. I'd prefer to just let them spend it on their operations. We could make recommendation. We'd like you to market or do these things, but to have to go back and monitor that, it's got to be tough. So that's all I have.
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Jessica and the same question to Councilmember Cooks, and I'll address the question to Jessica first. Jessica, if we approve the program that's presented by the EDC tonight, if we approved it tonight, how long do you think it would take before the local businesses were helped
by this program?
Realistically, the application period, if it was approved tonight, I would see that opening either Friday or Monday. And then you look at a 3-week process after that. Realistically, we're looking at June, most likely before they would actually have a check in hand. By the time that you went through the 3-week process, and then also you got the check cut at the city, it could be June.
Same question, Councilmember Cooks.
Wait, I'm glad you asked. That same time frame falls right along with the same thing. You only put in a stipulation in how the money is used. The reason payroll is very important in this because we still are creating jobs or keeping jobs for all of those who have had to lose jobs, and we're assuring that money that we are pulling from our city budget is still used to that business owner and not just spent on expense of staying there and not in insurance that they won't stay. The 50% advertisement, I would really hope that if we don't pull anything else from this, that you would consider this 50% or some percentage for advertisement. And why do I say that? Because we talk about Shop Duncanville, but we don't encourage our business owners to help people by shopping Duncanville by sending them literature to come in and for the reason to come shop them. We're doing ourselves a disjustice. So I would tell you that by the stipulations I've just talked about does not add to the process at all. It just puts some more teeth in the process from the grant. The only thing that's different is the 25,000. Now that may take another week on the 25,000, but from the 5,000 to 10,000 grant, it's simple. It's not going to add any more time to it.
All right. Well,
it still requires the same approval, EDC and council.
All right. Well, I certainly want to thank the EDC and the staff for the work that they did, and want to thank Councilmember Cooks for putting in the additional work to provide an alternative. Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. What we started out with was.
Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, God.
All right.
No, we can now.
Ms. Jameson, we can hear you now. Go ahead. I'll go after you.
This has been fun. I just wanted to say that the Economic Development Board did a good job. I heard their meeting, and I agree that the money needs to get there as soon as possible. I don't think that we should mandate which parts of their business it should go to, because only they know where it's needed the most. And as far as what I heard the board say, and at this point I tend to agree with, and maybe in the future after other discussions, but they were saying they really weren't in the banking business to manage loans. And I kind of tend to agree with that. And that's what you get into when you have the loans. So, I think that might be something that if in the future we saw some need for, that we discuss. But I think they did a good job. And I commend you, Mr. Dow. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, my comments are, we started out with a racehorse or a sprinter coming from the program of the EDC, and what Councilmember Cooks has provided has made us a marathoner. It's just too much. We need to allow them the flexibility to be quick and nimble, and putting all those parameters and stipulations into it, Mr. Cooks, I cannot agree with. I cannot agree with excluding somebody who's gotten PPP or an EIDL, because look at what the United States government has done. The United States government. I'm getting feedback. The United States government has. Okay, I'll try it again.
Okay, I'll try it again.
I'm still getting feedback. John,
I'm still getting feedback. John.
all right. The United States,
The United States.
I don't know where the feedback is coming from.
Let me see if it's you, Barry. Do you hear
I'm
from me?
not, you know, the United States government has not precluded businesses from getting both the and the IDL. And for us as a small city to preclude somebody who's received through their own hard work to get a PPP and saying, if you've got a PPP, you can't apply for this, I think is just wrong. And putting all these stipulations and requirements into it just bogs the process down. If you read what the EDC has done, they have mirrored what the United States government has said. It's quick, nimble, and it permits the flexibility for businesses to do what they wish with it. And putting all these parameters into it just makes it, I think it's just, it encumbers it to the extent that the EDC is not going to be able to handle it. It needs to be open. It needs to be wide open. And the only thing I would ask that the EDC consider and not make it a stipulation, not make it part of the motion, is that I agree with what Mr. Anderson said, that there needs to be, you know, something, not necessarily a mandatory floor of 5,000, but allow that ceiling to go up to 10, because I think it's very, very important that they allow them to do that. But Mr. Cooks, I'm sorry, it's a great deal of thought you put into it, and I appreciate it, but all those little pieces that bog this program down, I'm sorry, I can't agree with it.
Oh, no problem about agreeing. I definitely want us to see on the other side of it. I know many of you are looking at it, and many of you are looking at it, it's bogging down. It's really not, but I can respect each one of your thoughts, especially, again, commend the EDC for the work they did put into it. But I do have one question, so I can accept what you guys have, even though I still think this is not bogging it down, it's helping the process. But I will ask Jessica on one question I have on the plan. Are you saying that they're having to use their money first before they get awarded the grants? Is that what I understand on the presentation?
That is correct. It's a reimbursement grant. So those expenses that they've already incurred would be from that March date that I had provided, would be, or in the next 6 months would be reimbursed. Yes, as long as they were operating.
What we're hearing is they'll either have to already spent their money or spend their own money before they get reimbursed. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is correct. It's a reimbursement grant. Yes, sir.
So the money they don't have, they already have spent it, or they already have spent it, or they're gonna have to spend it before they get reimbursed. Okay.
So, Mr. McBurnett, I noticed you came on.
No further comment.
Okay. So Jessica, looking at the documentation in terms of what we have in our packet, I don't see what would be a document for us to approve. It's just a presentation, or is there something missing from what I'm being able to pull up right now?
You would be approving the resolution, Mayor, that establishes the program.
Well, that's what I don't see. I don't see the resolution.
Mayor, it should be a link there also on your agenda item. There's 2 links.
Yeah, I've pressed them both. All I'm getting is the PowerPoint. Every time I keep punching both links, trying to do it separately, all I get is the PowerPoint. Oh, there it goes. Tiny fingers. Okay. All right. Hold it. All right. There's the resolution. All afternoon, all I could get was the PowerPoint. Okay. All right, council. If you have the resolution, and as I said, I'm in favor of the resolution as it stands, but with the suggestion to EDC, not a mandate, nothing to be changed, that they give consideration to going up to a ceiling of 10 versus a ceiling of 5. So if there's no further discussion, go ahead and take a vote on this particular resolution. This is resolution number 2020038 in your packet.
Mayor, we need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Councilmember Anderson makes a motion to,
I would like to make a motion to accept, with one change, up to $10,000 to accept the recommendation of the Economic Development Corporation.
so you want to put that stipulation into it rather than just making it a suggestion?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we have an amendment to approve the resolution as written with a stipulation that the maximum be up to $10,000. Mr. McBurnett. I'm sorry, you were garbled.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, as Mr. Anderson has said, and we have an approval, a second by Mr. McBurnett. Please take a roll call vote, City Secretary.
Question.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
Question.
Mayor Pro Tem, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
Or,
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you, council. The motion is approved as.
Mayor, I was trying to get a question in. I was trying to get a question in. And
Yeah.
the question, I want to make sure, I did vote on the item, but I wanted to ask, are you saying max 10,000, or meaning that they will get the max, everybody will get at least 10,000? Is that what I'm understanding? Explain,
No.
please.
No,
Explain, please.
No.
it gives the EDC the option of going from 1,500 up to 10,000.
So the minimum amount they can do is 1,500, and then max amount they can do is 10?
Yes, that's what we voted on.
Mayor, the minimum amount was 1,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think, okay, 1,000. Yeah, see, the floor was 1,000 and the max is now 10,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, council. Moving on to item 5C. Consider resolution amending the hotel occupancy tax grant for fiscal year 1920 budget in the amount of $852.50 for a total not to exceed $34,297.50 to the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce for property maintenance and computer upgrades while serving as the Duncanville Official Visitor Center, allowing for additional computer expenses and amending the FY 1920 hotel occupancy tax budget. This will be presented to us by Ms. James, and just want to add, looking over the requirement for this is $852 for what was done. It's replacing a whole lot of dinosaur technology by the chamber and bring it kind of into the 21st century, if you will, because looking at the servers and upgrading the drive to solid state from 250 gigabytes up to 500 gigabytes and giving them a brand new piece of gear. You know, $852 is really inexpensive for what's been done. Anyway, sorry to take that away from you, Jessica, but go ahead.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, Mayor, it's Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett. I'd just like to go ahead and make the motion we approve.
And I'd like to second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and we have a second, and I do have to open it for any discussion. Seeing no discussion, City Secretary, please take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
Or,
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
or,
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, 4 are against.
Or, thank you, council. Item 5C is approved. Moving on to item 5D, consider resolution approving submittal of FY 2020 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, project activity application with Dallas County. And this is being presented by Public Works Director Greg Ramey. It's interesting looking through all the documentation in our packet about this. I guess we're looking at about a $1.2 million possibility. And if we get that, our 20%, our max that we would have to contribute would be about $240,000. So not to take anything away from you, Greg, but go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item of business I want to talk with you about is the Community Development Block Grant and get your a selection for the projects that we want to do with the upcoming block of funding. Again, this is funding that we've been participating in for many years. The funding is biannual so that we get a larger chunk of money to do stuff with. Historically, we fund a CDBG code enforcement officer, and then we go to council to get your input on a project that we also want to do in the CDBG area. This year, the allotment for FY21 and FY22 is $203,000. Next slide, please. Again, the CDBG guidelines for CDBG, the rules are that the funding must be used in the CDBG area, and it must go towards the 3 tasks that you see below about addressing blight, threatening conditions, and just basically using the money to make the CDBG areas as good as to the best of their well, to be what they can be. Next slide, please. Here's a listing of the previous projects. As you'll see, the code enforcement officer was something that we've been doing since 2014 and probably beyond. This is just what we've done over the last 6 years. And over those last 6 years, we've spent a lot of that, the project money on public works related projects. Next slide, please. Here is a map showing the CDBG areas as well as the location of the 2 options for a project. Option 1 was improvements to Lakeside Park, and when we get into that area, I'll turn it over to Bart and he can tell you about his vision for that project. And then option 2 are ramp improvements over in the Forest Hill subdivision by Reed Middle School in that area. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn it over to Bart, talk about Lakeside Park.
Thank you, Greg. The last time CDBG funds were used for parks was back in 2012, 2013, when we utilized funds to upgrade pavilions at Chris Paris Park. There are 3 parks within the low income areas. Chris Paris Park, as I just mentioned, Oriole Park, which is a greenbelt, and then Lakeside Park. So we have chosen some projects at Lakeside Park for improvements for your consideration. Next slide, please. Top left is extending the trail that it goes from Hill City to the trail that comes off of Center Street that would connect that crushed granite trail and convert that to a full concrete trail within the park. And then on the top right, actually the entire right side there, you'll see we would like to upgrade the basketball court. That's a highly used basketball court. The court on the bottom you see there is Armstrong Park. That's been extremely successful. So we would upgrade the basketball play pad there to the acrylic backboards and fully painted slab. And then also upgrade the fence that you see in the bottom left that is rusted and kind of falling apart. Upgrade that to a new fence to keep the people playing in the volleyball courts and the basketball courts safe from the vehicular traffic. So that is what we are proposing for Lakeside Park. Next slide.
I'd like to ask, I can't see anything, so I'd like to ask a question of Bart though before he leaves.
I'm here.
Okay, I was just curious about the bond money. And the park's got a huge portion of that. So none of the bond money can be used for this? I thought we had trails in there.
We do have trail bond money that could be used for this, and we chose to use that money here. That is an option. That is an option.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
Greg. Were there any questions for Bart before I talk about option 2? Okay, hearing none. So option 2 is some ADA ramps in the Forest Hills area. That area does have sidewalks, but they do not have ramps. And so this project would be basically continuing the city's efforts to enhance the walkability of our neighborhoods by allowing the sidewalks to be more friendly for strollers, for wheelchairs, for bicycles, kids' bicycles in the neighborhood. And then this is the area that we would be focusing on. Next slide, please. So here's the summary of the project options. As you see, we took out the money for the code officer for 2 years, which left us approximately $90,000 for CDB funding. There again are the 2 projects where I'm asking council to pick between option 1 or option 2. And again, the $80,000 that you see there are the city's cost estimates. There is a delta between that and the remaining funding, and that would be either to cover any costs related to the actual bids that they come in when this money is made available to us, or to extend a little bit of scope onto the project. So for example, with the sidewalk project, the ramps, if we had some money left over when the bids came in, we could advance to address a few other ramps in that neighborhood. Next slide, please. Here's the timeline for the CDBG. Following your approval this evening and selection of the 2 projects, or between the 2 projects and the code officer, we'll turn that into the county. The county does have some public hearings that you see those dates, and then we'll be able to, we anticipate having funds available to the city in FY21. Next slide, please. That concludes my brief, subject to your questions.
Greg, Bart, I do have a question. Going back to what Councilmember Jameson was asking, I mean, both of these projects that you're putting forward are really great and both very necessary. You know, the trail at Lakeside is a wonderful idea, and the ADA ramps are necessary really for our population. Is there any money left in the bond to permit using that 80, or to doing what you want for option 1 in Lakeside, and then using the CDBG for the ramps? Do we have to choose, I guess, is the bottom line.
Mayor, if I could maybe answer on that for just a minute.
Yes, sure.
So the one thing about the park projects, and as Councilmember Jameson said, the trail definitely could be bond money because that is a long-term capital project. But the other projects that are proposed are not really long-term capital projects. I don't think that they would be eligible for bond money because that is a long-term, I mean, they shouldn't be used, or we shouldn't use long-term bond money for a short-term type of project, I guess is what I'm saying. So those 2 things are probably not appropriate for bond money. The trail could be. if that helps with your decision on which option.
So is it possible to, could y'all go back to option one? I guess, I know that there was, yeah, so if we use bond money for the trail, but use CDBG for the basketball court and the fence and so forth, is that possible to break these pieces out, or is it just not the right thing to do?
No.
Well, Mayor, I mean, we certainly can go back and back out the price of the trail, if that's the wish of you and the council, and then apply whatever the delta is in our cost estimates towards some of the ramps that we presented in option 2.
I'd like to say something. This is Councilmember Jameson.
Yeah, sure.
I think that is on the ramps, on the sidewalks, the only place we can take the money to do that would be general fund. And I think that there is money in the bond money to do the park items. That's, and the difference in, you couldn't do the ramps with bond money, but you could do the parks. And the ramps would have to come from general fund. So this is the bond money can, I mean, not the bond money, the spending for these projects are for low income areas, and they have, well, you saw the 3 criteria. And so they're a lot more controlled as to what they can go for. And that's one of the reasons why it was perfect to fund a code officer in a low income area. It took something off of general fund and went to this grant. So does that make sense? It took an employee's pay for 2 years and went to this because it qualified for the bond. Not the bond, the grant. And then the parks could go on the bond money, but the ADA ramps can't. If we did them, they'd have to come out of general fund.
Yeah, I understand that. They're just, both of the options are just so needed and necessary and good. I'm just
Well, I think we were going to do that though, weren't we? We were going to do that in the parks. We were going to do that with the bond money. I know that the trails were on there.
Mayor, Council, those particular pieces of Lakeside Park were not identified as potential projects. However, we do try to look at doing small park projects each year as part of the general fund budget. So, I mean, it is possible that we could, try to get those done over time through some park improvements if you wanted to do the ramps. The ramps, to do those would be a general fund item as well. We would have to find street money to do those if we were going to do them. So again, I mean, both points they're valid points. So if you want to go with the ramps, then we would just try to do these kinds of improvements in the parks as we could. The trail itself could be a bond project. The other 2 things, the courts, the fence, would probably just be done as we could get to them.
That'd be kind of my preference. I mean, it's, as I said, both of these are such good things to use our money on. The ADA kind of pops to me as the priority. The ramps, taking care of our people that, in terms of walkability and complying with the ADA, that's a great thing to do. And if we could work the trails from some bond money and then come up with some parks money for those other three pieces of what's going on at Lakeside, I'd really kind of like to see it that way. But I'm really open to I hate to complicate things, but when you put two great things in front of us and making us pick between two great things, it's just difficult. But I kind of push toward the ADA ramps myself, and seeing if we can find the money to do the park. Need some input from y'all folks. Okay, yeah, Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I would say that in response to your concern about difficult choices, you know, that's why our community puts so much trust in us and pays us the big bucks so we can make tough decisions. So well, I like the ramp because we do have several options for doing the Lakeside Park improvements, but we don't have the same number of options available to fund the ramps. So it's really doing the ramps is really a maintenance issue, which would come out of the maintenance fund. So I would be in favor of the doing the ramps.
Okay, yeah, so it's myself and Patrick for the ramps. Anybody else? Yeah, Mark.
Me, I'm for the ramps. Jameson.
All right, Johnette for the ramps.
Ramps is fine. Mark.
Mark.
Ramps.
I didn't hear.
Ramps is good.
Ramps is good. Ramps is good. Joe, did you say ramps?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Monty.
Ramps is good.
Okay, all right, we're there. All right. So we're good with the ramps, guys. I hope y'all are good with ramps. I think it's a good thing to do for our people, for the walkability, and for that particular portion of our town. I think that our citizens would really appreciate it. And yeah, Patrick, you're right. It's where we get paid big bucks for difficult decisions.
Hey, Mayor, we do need a motion on that, and so the recommendation then is for the CDBG officer and then option 2, the ADA ramps. Is that correct? But we do need a motion and a vote.
That is correct. Somebody would wish to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. The motion as stated by Mr. Hugman, motion to approve by Councilmember Jameson, and I didn't get the second.
Second.
Who's that?
Harvey.
I still didn't get that second.
Second by Patrick Harvey.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, got it. Very good. Okay, so City Secretary, roll call vote on that motion, please.
Councilmember Veracruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you. The motion is approved unanimously. Appreciate that. Okay, going on to item 5E, and I apologize, folks. What I interrupted Greg for at the beginning of his presentation was actually for the build grant, not the CDBG. So put what I said here. Anyway, all right, Greg, consider the item, where are we? 5E, consider resolution supporting Dallas County's Daniel Dale Road project, application for better utilizing investment to leverage development. It's also called the build grant. This is for Greg Ramey. Greg?
Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Next slide, please. So to follow on with this, I'm with the scene setter. So back in November, when we approved the general obligation bond for street improvements, that kicked off our efforts on Daniel Dale Road with the corridor study and the decision by council to convert Daniel Dale and make it a 4-lane divided road with bike and pedestrian facilities. In November, Dallas did a 7th call for projects. And what we found when the Dallas County looked at all the projects, they found that there was some synergy between what DeSoto and Dallas had submitted for their 7th call projects on Daniel Dale Road, as well as what we're doing on Daniel Dale Road currently with our US 67 to Maine bond project, and then our overall decision on the corridor to make it a 4-lane. And so they realized this is an opportunity to really expand that whole Daniel Dale corridor with 4 lanes and with bike and pedestrian facilities. So in April, we had our initial meeting and we talked about, Dallas County presented this option to us, which is why I'm here tonight. Next slide. So just a little bit of background. You see what the acronym BUILD stands for. This next allocation from the federal government is $1 billion, $25 million per project. It's sponsored by the Department of Transportation, and again, you see the focus of this is to, for us, is, you know, in this particular aspect is the regional connectivity, access to reliable, safe, affordable transportation, and there is a federal local cost share of 80/20. Next slide, please. So here is a summary of what Dallas County is proposing to submit on all the partner cities' behalf for this build grant. They've been working with the consultant and the COG to try to sort of lay the foundations to give this project, I guess, the best possible showing at the federal level. And what we're looking at as you go from east to west, Dallas wants to convert their Daniel Dale Road from 2-lane to 4-lane divided with bike and pedestrian facilities for 2.5 miles. And then at the DeSoto limit, DeSoto is going to do a 2-lane road to 4-lane road conversion with upgrade with bike and pedestrian facilities. And then the last mile from the Duncanville city limits to US 67 is going to be our conversion of our 6-lane road into the interim solution that we had talked about during the Daniel Dale Road corridor study, where we convert the outside lanes into buffered bike lanes. And then of course that would then tie into the Daniel Dale Road work that we're doing west of 67 to Main Street. And then hopefully this will continue down the road as we build east or build west. Next slide, please. So again, for looking into excuse me, at Duncanville, this was the interim solution that was proposed during our corridor study, where we convert the outside lanes into a buffered bike lane consisting of a painted, striped painted area with curb and delineators to further enhance it. And then you just see some pictures down at the bottom of a sample of the curb and delineators that we're talking about. Next slide, please. So here are the next steps. Dallas County would do the grant application on the 18th. So with your approval, we'll start the paperwork for the excuse me, for this application. We anticipate learning about when if we got the grant on mid-September. In 2022 is the deadline to complete the pre-construction activities. This is more along the lines of what Dallas and DeSoto would have to do with environmental right-of-way acquisition and all those things. We already have our right-of-way. We would just need to just basically paint some stripes and install those delineators. We'll be looking at FY23 construction work, subject to funding. As the mayor said, right now, the estimate for our portion of the work is approximately $1.2 million, which would equate to approximately, $240,000 in FY23, subject to funding that is currently shown in Public Works 5-year plan. But of course, council sets our budget, and so we would again be subject to funding. And these projects would have to be complete by the end of fiscal year 27. Slide, please. Subject to your questions.
Will be riding bikes 27? Right. Greg, thank you for that. Thank you. I do have a question, Mayor. So you're saying, help me with the DeSoto and Dallas and Duncanville connection. Is that here on, is that West Daniel? East Daniel?
Can you go back to the map, Tracy?
Yeah, it's East Daniel, Mark.
Okay. This is East Daniel. So basically, 1 mile ends at the city limit, right there at was it Meadows at Daniel Dale Farms and Willow Run, the two roads before we get to the city limit. So it's a mile of
right for the new home built in DeSoto then.
Correct.
Okay. And Dallas portion is where the warehouse is going that way as well. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Question, Greg.
Yes, sir.
We've already allocated that money to do our portion. Do we have to wait until all of this gets approved until like 2023 and 27, or do we go ahead with our portion for that 1 mile?
We have not allocated our portion. We're doing a bond road west of 67. The
That's
funds
right.
to do this conversion have not been identified, but the cost to do the work, at least in today's dollars, is about $1.2 million. And so what we're trying to do is see if we can leverage this grant to make this a reality for 20% of that.
Yeah, I got it. This is the other side. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So this is the other side. So now it connects to the side that we voted for where the bond money comes into play by the service center. Is that correct?
Correct. If you continue to the west off this map, that's our section that we're doing. That's currently in design right now. That's part of the bond.
So really, even though this is showing 1 mile, that's 1 mile with this project. It really gets to 2 miles when we do the other side.
If I'm not mistaken, our part is a half a mile west of 67.
All right,
so in Duncanville, what we would have is, as you're going we'll go from east to west from I-35. The vision would be a 4-lane road with bike and pedestrian facilities, probably something similar to what we're designing for our bond project. And then went through Dallas, through DeSoto, and then it would then merge with our interim solution, where we take the outer lanes of Daniel Dale Road and make them bike lanes, because we already have sidewalks on the north end of Daniel Dale. We're putting them in now. We just finishing that job. And then when you get to 67, you go over 67. And then for the next half mile till we get to Main Street, we would have our 4-lane road with bike and pedestrian facilities. And then it would terminate at Main Street and then just be a 6-lane road all the way to Clark till we did those follow-on conversions. Once we get west of Clark, it turns back into a 4-lane road with bike and pedestrian facilities.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Monty?
So Greg, you said, I think you started off in the presentation, you said that our agreement to do the stuff from 67 to Maine actually had some influence on this coming about, right? I mean, you said, did you say?
They realize it gives, it really gives this project, what Dallas County is really looking at is how do we connect 67 and 35 and improving this road overall with bike and pedestrian facilities. The fact that it's anchoring in Duncanville with our improvement doing on the west side of 67 and the overall decision by council for the corridor, putting bike lanes on this corridor, definitely, and with the 3 cities gives us some synergy, makes this project very viable at the federal level. So yes, they are leveraging our bond work that we're doing on the west side.
I think this is excellent. I mean, this is, you're talking about having a bike lane all the way from 35 to Clark Road, you know, in fairly short order, you know, 7 years or so. But I think this is excellent. Good job, Greg.
Yeah, good job. Good job, Greg, as well. And so now so from our one investment of 1 million, we've gained grants. What was that, the amount now that we were getting grants on?
So what we're asking for on this particular job, what would it would look like in roughly the FY23 is about $240K to $250,000, depending on, you know, actual prices, you know, as we get closer to that timeline. And then we would leverage that to get the other $1 million. And so we would do, but it would only get us this far. I don't want to, you know, I want to make sure I'm clear though. Once we do this mile, provided we get the build grant, and then we do our half-mile road, there's still about 1.5 miles of Daniel Dale Road that would still need future funding to complete the conversion.
No, I just want to commend this council for turning a 1.2 million investment into more based upon making a decision on that half a mile road that's constructed with bike lanes. What a return on our investment.
Okay, Ms. Jamison.
It was more than 1.2 million.
For that particular part of the road. I'm not sure, whatever it is. It's a great return.
Yes.
It was like 3 point something.
It's the road that we're building west of 67 between Maine and 67 is about $2.5 million worth of bond money for the road and an almost equal amount of money from the utility fund for the subsurface utilities.
So the item before us is to approve going forward with DeSoto and the city of Dallas with this particular, for this build project.
Correct. We're just asking for council's consideration of a resolution of support for this build grant application so that we can go forward and take the application. Dallas County can take our resolution of support as well as the support from Dallas and DeSoto and the county and the COG and take it up to the federal government so we can compete for this funding.
Right. The language in the resolution that we're talking about here, it says that the city council of the city of Duncanville hereby supports the Dallas County, the build grant application for auto, bike, and pedestrian improvements along Daniel Dale Road between 67 and 35 on behalf of the cities of Duncanville, DeSoto, and Dallas. That's the resolution that we're looking at approving. So do I have a motion to approve?
I love the motion to approve the resolution for.
Second.
Okay, so Mark is making the motion, and who got the second?
Monty seconded it.
Monty got the second. Okay. All right, City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
I'm dancing for 4.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
He's dancing for 4. Oh.
Hold up for. Okay. At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For the Mark D. Cooks Memorial Bike Trail.
That means
Mayor
he's
Gordon.
dead by the time we do
Memorial, is he dead?
it.
Yeah.
For.
Mayor Gordon.
Okay. Yeah, for. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, council. Yeah, we have unanimous approval. Okay, just to keep it in order, we have item 5F is taking necessary action as a result of executive session. There is no action to be taken as a result.
Mayor Gordon,
Yes, ma'am.
we have item 4D to do also.
I know that. It's 5G.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm actually figuring stuff out here, Kristen. Okay. So item 5F is there's no action to be taken as a result of executive session. And now we move to item 4D, which was on the consent agenda items, and that's creating it as 5G. So I will read 4D now, or actually 5G. Consider a resolution authorizing incorporation of amendment number 1 to contract number 20-017 to Eagle Remediation and Demolition Services, LLC, in the amount of $13,977 for the demolition and removal of a lube pit and underground fuel storage tanks at the property located at 727 South Cockrell Hill Road for the revised total contract amount of $53,768. And Councilmember Jameson, you asked for this to be moved to individual consideration, so please go ahead.
Okay, I would like to ask Mr. Ramey some questions. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Greg.
Okay. Did you meet with the applicants?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Did you meet with the applicants?
You mean the bidders?
Yes.
I met with the bidder to the extent that they were at a pre-bid meeting that was available to all interested parties. And at an initial kickoff meeting, when before they went out and got final measurements of the volumes of contaminated liquid that they had to remove.
Okay, I was just curious because I saw when I asked for the bids and the paper came in that listed the address as the service center and not where you are at City Hall. And so did he measure the liquid? Because it's my understanding that this is done by putting a rod down or a stick to measure the fluids like they do at service stations. And it is incumbent on him to have done some of the research when he made a bid.
Well,
yeah.
Well, one thing, ma'am, that you probably saw in the staff report is one of the tanks we were not able to uncover, and so part of our amendment to the bid or to the contract is to account for and assumed that that tank is full. The other tanks, we're full. When they went out, they did measure them. That is not necessarily something that we did within Public Works. We made an assumption on how much fluid was in there The loop pit was very hard to measure, to be perfectly honest, because the amount of debris that was in the loop pit, well, we couldn't even, when we were out there, we couldn't even find the bottom, just because there was the old stairs are in there and just a bunch of rubbish that's down in the bottom, and it's just a big black goo. At the end of the day, we are paying this contractor for is based on volume removed. So this is not a firm fixed price contract to the extent that now, that we're awarding this contract for the increased amount, that they're entitled to the full amount. They are getting paid, if I remember correctly, 40 cents a gallon to remove the fluids. And if they do not use the full amount if they don't pull out the full amount that we anticipated, then they will not get that money.
Okay, because I noticed on your, it's on page 2, Appendix A, in the standard construction contract, it said all extra work shall be performed as specified or indicated in the contract documents and at the contractor's own cost and expense. The contractor shall furnish all material, supplies, machinery, equipment, tools, superintendents, labor, insurance, and other accessories and services as may be necessary in order to complete the construction as described above and in accordance with the contract documents, unless otherwise agreed to by the owner. And, when I got those other bids and how close, actually, they weren't the lowest. The first one was like, it was less than $20, I think, difference. But it just makes you wonder if this amount had been added, if it had been different on the bidding, because this contract stipulates that all extra work shall be performed as specified and indicated in the contract documents and at the contractor's own cost and expense. So
I understand where you're coming from. So where I was, the way I was seeing it was that the increase in fluid over what was assumed was what I considered an existing site condition.
Well, but this says that, basically, in a lot of businesses, what they bid on, if they underbid, they have to eat it sometimes because they underbid. That's just
their bid also stipulated the 13,200 gallons was the basis for their bid. And so
okay.
I'll defer to Bob on the ruling on that. But again,
okay.
That was the way I looked at it. We bid 13.2. It came in higher than we expected. So I thought it would be an existing site condition, which was the justification for the increase. Regarding the other bids, one was extremely high, one was in the ballpark, but the other person, I'm sure you saw my notes when I reviewed them, it was a little bit lower, but they did not provide what I considered a responsible proposal.
Well, and did you question them further, like who their past people they did business with? Because that was one of the notations you made, was that they didn't include any. So I would ask them, who can vouch for you?
In a bid, you show up with what you have.
Okay, and
a bad bid and a very unprofessional done bid, I'm not usually inclined to ask any more questions of a bid that's submitted the way I entered my opinion was very unprofessionally done.
Well, this is apparently a bad bid too, because before they even got started, they came back for an amendment. But since we're asking Hager, I'd like to ask Mr. Hager. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Have
Yes,
they
ma'am.
changed? Okay, good. Have they changed the law, or is it still a law that you cannot charge over 25% of the original bid on an amendment?
Yeah, it's part of the requirement that a bid be 25% as a change order or an amendment.
So this is over that. I think that in doing the math, that 25% would be $49,738.75.
My understanding was that we were not, when we originally were working this, we tried to do this as a change order to the awarded bid and then come to you. My understanding after talking with Attorney Hager was what we're doing is not doing a change order. We're actually amending the original contract and then re-awarding it. Is that?
The original contract was not awarded, so technically it's not a change order under the statute. It's part of the original bid and contract. The council can either accept the full amount of $53,768, or they can reject it and you'd have to rebid it.
Why wouldn't we rebid it, since if it comes in now at 53,000, that changes?
In most cases, it's been my experience that everyone has now shown their bid, and so if it gets rebid, the prices are generally higher.
Well, it is higher.
It'll be higher than 53,000. Because here's my understanding. No one knew, neither us nor any of the bidders, what the volume of the liquid was in the tanks and had access to all that information. So to some extent, all the bidders were bidding blind. So if we awarded it to someone else, they likewise would have probably come back and said, hey, we found this other tank and it appears to have so many gallons in it, and therefore as a result of that, they would have either withdrawn the bid or submitted this new negotiated price. So it was material, that the actual liquid removal. So, but the council could obviously not award the bid and move on to a second bidder, or ask that it be rebid.
Mr. Hager, it was accepted. It didn't come before us because it was below $50,000. It's coming to us now because it would be over $50,000. It was accepted. And this is the first amendment. This isn't the first contract. The contract was signed.
Well, if he fails to perform under the contract and refuses to sign it, then we're in a lawsuit and we'll spend more than $13,000. As a practical,
this is over 25%, and it was accepted on a contract. So I mean, that's chin boogie. It's over 25%, and yes, my old AT&T stuff is kicking in. This is over the bid. This is over his contract. It's over 25%.
Well, technically, it didn't need to be bid. The reason it's coming to you, it's the city manager's signing authority. But now it's over 50,000. You can either approve it or not approve it, and we'll go out and bid it. The original contract was not bid, so you can't say that the bid statute would necessarily apply, although you're correct that an amendment to a bidded contract that's awarded by the city under procurement cannot exceed 25%.
And it has. It was even called that. It's an amendment to the contract. And now we want to say it isn't.
No, it is an amendment to an agreement. But it's coming to you because now it's over $50,000, so that you have to award it. So the fact that Kevin signed it would mean that they would have to perform the work, which would not include this tank. So,
or they could either accept the $49,738.75, which brings it to the 25%, or it could be sent out for rebid.
Correct. Or for bidding, because now we would anticipate that it would be over 50,000 with the extra removal from the extra tank that's located.
What?
Okay, Okay, we've heard all the discussion. We've heard a legal opinion. Janet, we've heard your considerable expression of understanding of the contract. Well, it wasn't even bid in the first place. This is an amendment to something, creating something.
It was bid. Barry, it was bid. Did you get the copies of the bid?
It was bid, but it wasn't bid under state law. Under state
Wasn't-
law, it requires a bid of anything over 50. It was signed by the city manager because it's under the $50,000. But because there is now a new oil pit that's been located in the exact,
It was there.
It was
This
not-
is not true. None of this is true. The oil pit was there. They just didn't measure the fluid in it at the time because he said there was junk in the way and they couldn't get the lid off. And so they've come back with charging more money for the contract that they won on a bid that was less than. You know, I think that we should stay in the law and try to do what's right. I mean, just my opinion, Bob, stay in the law, do what's right.
well, what may be right may not be. I'm not going to argue with you, okay? I'm not going to do that. So if you can't change the award based on, that's his offer. So you can't change the offer. So you either have to award the contract based on the 53,768 or not award it. You can't renegotiate it tonight.
Well, I didn't say renegotiate it. I'm saying pull it and let him go back and ask him, you want to do it for the 25% over the original contract, the $49,738.75, which is the maximum amount by law that you can do.
But what I'm understanding is if we don't accept this amendment of 13,977, we go back and rebid the entire piece of work, which is going to come in most likely greater than $54,000.
You don't have to do that.
Sure you do. That's what Bob is saying.
Well,
Bob is not shooting straight.
Well, Bob is shooting straight, and I don't appreciate you say that I'm not. You cannot negotiate this contract tonight. You can either accept this.
I didn't say you could. I said pull
Or
it and come back after Ramey talks to him.
All right, we've had enough discussion and we understand your position, John.
If Mr. Ramey,
The attorney is saying to us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? I will second the motion. City Secretary, please take a vote.
Councilmember Veracruz, 4 are against.
4,
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Anderson, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Cooks, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against.
Against.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Gordon, 4 are against.
4. Thank you. Item changed to 4D, been changed to 5G, is approved by a vote of 6-1. And that takes us to item number 6, which is staff and board reports. The first board report we have is to receive the FY 22nd quarter investment report as of March 31st. Are there any questions of Mr. Summerlin, presuming that you have read his report? Are there any questions of Mr. Summerlin? I do have one question of Mr. Summerlin. Rich, in view of what's happening in the market and how things are, well, they're up and down, you know, whether we'll recover back to 29, nobody knows. That is the Dow. But how is what's happening in the market affecting our T-bill rates and any effects on the rest of our investments?
Yes, Mayor Gordon. Of course, since the Federal Open Market Committee lowered the interest rates, we're seeing the interest rates that we're able to get with CD renewals decline. We're also seeing an erosion in the rates that we're earning on our money market funds, as well as our government pools. And so at the moment, I feel that we're in pretty good shape because I've invested in CDs to about the maximum amount that I can, and I have those rates locked in at much higher than today's prevailing rates. And so that helps our portfolio to be above where interest rates are at this very moment. So as those rates continue to decline, we'll get closer to the prevailing T-bill rates, which is the prevailing benchmark, if you will. And so that's the best I can say is that, you know, I continue to monitor daily what's going on in the market and look for any opportunities to invest in anything that would, you know, bring us a higher yield for our portfolio. So we also have to maintain a fair amount of liquidity to maintain our operations and to pay for bond projects and other projects that are underway as well.
Okay, so it's your considered professional opinion that because of the way you're handling our investments, we're somewhat insulated from the volatility in the market at the moment. Somewhat.
Yes, to the extent that I think my longest term CD is a 2-year CD. And, you know, there will come a time when those begin to mature. And the hope is that when that part of the portfolio begins to mature, we're back into a cycle of rising interest rates.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions from Mr. Summerlin on item 6A? Okay, seeing none, going on item 6B, receive the monthly financial report. Any questions of Mr. Summerlin on the financial report? Seeing none, moving on to items.
I would just like to ask what Richard thinks is going to happen with our sales tax income this quarter we're in, if he's got any indication of what he projects.
Well, Monty, that's probably the question that almost every city finance director is struggling with. And as I've talked to others around, most people are modeling something in the neighborhood of a 20 to 25% decrease in sales tax as we move into the months that were affected by COVID. And so I think last meeting, City Manager Hugman alluded to the fact that we are 2 months behind. That's standard, 2 months behind of getting our sales tax from the state. So it will be June before we're able to really have some definitive feedback on what that effect will be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 6C, receive the Parks and Recreation quarterly report. Any questions on that, council members? Okay, seeing none there. Item 6D, receive the Fieldhouse quarterly report. Any questions there? Okay, we'll move on. I did notice, if you looked at that, significant decline in terms of attendance, but that's only understandable and expected. All right, that concludes our city council meeting, and declaring adjournment of our city council meeting of May 5th, 2020, adjourned at 10:04 p.m. Thank you very much. Please log off.